Elijah, as you will recall, I hope, from last week, was a prophet at the time of Ahab, king of Old Testament Israel, 9 centuries before Christ. He'd told Ahab that there would be a drought because of Ahab and Israel's unfaithfulness to God. We're now more than 3 years on, and Elijah is pretty unpopular with Ahab. Therefore, Obadiah, who we read was a devout believer in the Lord, was pretty reluctant to be the one to bring Ahab to meet him. But Elijah manages to twist his arm. Ahab's greeting makes it pretty clear how things stand. Is that you troubler of Israel? However bad things have got, no one has yet greeted me that way. There's a brief response from Elijah by way of touche. Then Elijah tells Ahab what he wants him to do. Surprisingly, perhaps, I want to give Ahab some credit at this point. I know from experience that bishops and the like don't like being told what to do. How much more so Old Testament kings? I see Ahab as a bit like the sort of English liberal intellectual that used to abound in the 1960s and 70s. They enjoyed hearing alternative points of view, and Elijah seems to be proposing the equivalent of a debate. In fact, it turns into a contest. Even better. Elijah goes to the people. There are obviously a lot of onlookers. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. I hear in this a rector's plaintive cry. If only the people would be more committed, less Laodicean, lukewarm. Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. If Christianity is true, it is earth-shattering and life-changing. Has the earth moved for you? In this case, the people's response spoke volumes, but the people said nothing. A lesser man might think, time to shake off the dust and move on. Not so Elijah. He persists. But now, having given Ahab 1.5 cheers, I feel the need to take Elijah down a peg. He says, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left. Yet he knows this isn't the case. Obadiah had told him in verse 13 of the 100 prophets he had hidden in caves. True enough, they're not there, facing 450 prophets of Baal, not to mention 400 prophets of Asherah. Probably quite a sight. But nonetheless, there's no need to gild the lily. Elijah lays down the ground rules of the contest, and the people find their voice. What you say is good. Have you heard the expression, don't try this at home? What Elijah is doing is done in response to specific command from God, as he makes clear in verse 36. Without such specific sanction from God, Jesus' words apply. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. The prophets of Baal called on the name of Baal from morning till noon and danced around the altar they had made. Morning would have meant break of dawn. That's a lot of shouting and dancing. 6 hours worth. Verse 27. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or travelling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. Talk about rubbing it in. I actually had a question from one of my church wardens about this, Sarah from Hawksworth. She sang with a choir that was performing Mendelssohn's oratorio, Elijah, the text of which is taken from the authorized version of the Bible. Sarah was singing, "He talketh," or "he is pursuing," or "he is on a journey." What does pursuing mean? She asked. I had an answer. What Elijah is probably saying is, maybe Baal's on the lavatory. Who says prophets don't have a sense of humour, albeit a little coarse for our tastes. Verse 28. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. My former cat, Tigger, now warrants another mention. We got him as a weeks-old kitten. That first night, we were told to take him out into the garden and scratch around in the earth a bit to give him the idea. He took the hint. We're back in Elijah territory. That's how Baal worship worked. You were to give Baal an illustration of what you were after and see if he took the hint. Streams of blood flowing? Baal was supposed to realize that streams of fire were required. Remember that first response of the people? There wasn't one. Baal is likewise dumbstruck. Verse 29. There was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Oh dear, all that shouting, dancing, and slashing for nothing. Elijah is determined to ram home his point. Verse 33. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said. And they did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered. And they did it a 3rd time. Remember, there's been drought for over 3 years. King Ahab had sent Obadiah in search of some grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so they would not have to kill any of the animals. Elijah must have been very sure of his ground, while Ahab must have been beside himself, seeing all this water being sloshed around. Elijah prays at the appointed time, the time of sacrifice, verses 36 and 37. That's what lies at the heart of this passage. Baal worship? Mumbo-jumbo, magic tricks, the concept of a God who needs to be shown, Tigger-like, what to do. By contrast, Elijah's prayer. As James says in the New Testament, the prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. The people's response when they saw the result of Elijah's prayer, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" They found their voice at last, about time. As for the prophets of Baal, Elijah had them brought down to the Kidron Valley and slaughtered there. Prophets of Baal, beware. As you possibly know, I'm fond of the oratorio The Crucifixion by Sir John Stainer. It contains the words, "From the throne of his cross, the King of grief cries out to a world of unbelief, O men and women, afar and nigh, is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by?" Elijah, aka Plenty of Rector, asks, how long will you waver between two opinions? English liberal intellectuals of the 1960s and 70s enjoyed hearing alternative points of view. In Vancouver, in 2019, I fear that's not the case. As Christians, we have to fight for every inch of ground. We have to fight for a hearing. Yet, all the evidence is for us. Elijah proved that. Fight we the fight with sorrow and sin to set their captives free, that the earth may be filled with the glory of God as the waters cover the sea. Amen.